Have you ever looked around and wondered, why do so many people follow the crowd, even when it's clearly wrong? Why is it that in a world filled with information, wisdom seems harder to find? This is the story of a young man who almost lost himself in the noise of collective stupidity, but found his way back through the power of critical thinking. And maybe, just maybe, this story will remind you to think for yourself before the world decides what you should believe. Meet Arman, a 19-year-old boy from a small city. He wasn't poor, but he wasn't rich either. He had access to the internet, to books, to teachers, yet he often felt like he was drowning. Everywhere he turned, people around him seemed more interested in fitting in than figuring things out. At school, if everyone copied the same wrong answer, Arman copied it too. On social media, if everyone laughed at a cruel joke, he laughed too, though his heart didn't agree. He had opinions, questions, doubts, but silence felt safer than standing out. Inside, he often asked himself, why do I feel like a puppet? Why do I let others think for me? Arman's biggest struggle wasn't his lack of intelligence, it was his fear of being different. One day, in class, the teacher asked, "What do you all think about success? Is it about money, fame, or something deeper?" One student boldly answered, "It's money. Money buys everything." The class clapped. Everyone nodded. Arman wanted to disagree. He wanted to say, "But what about happiness? What about peace?" Yet he stayed silent. That night he wrote in his journal, "Why is truth so heavy on my tongue but lies so light in the air?" He started failing, not in exams but in courage. Each time he stayed silent, he lost a piece of himself. Each time he followed the crowd, he felt smaller inside. Then came the breaking point. His college arranged a debate competition. The topic, does technology make us smarter or dumber? Arman prepared all night, his arguments sharp, his points clear. He believed in what he wrote. He wanted to speak the truth. But when he got on stage, something unexpected happened. The other team spoke first. They delivered loud, flashy points filled with half-truths and jokes. The audience clapped and cheered. Arman stood there with his notes in hand and froze. What if they laugh at me? What if no one agrees? He read a few lines, stumbled, lost track, and walked off. The judges gave him the lowest score. His friends mocked him. "Bro, you sounded like a robot. You should have just cracked some jokes instead of thinking so much." That night, Arman cried alone. He looked in the mirror and whispered, "I'm done. I'll just become like everyone else. Thinking hurts too much." It was his rock bottom, but life has a strange way of sending signs. A week later, Arman's philosophy professor noticed him sitting quietly after class. The professor said, "Arman, why do you look so defeated?" Arman sighed. "Sir, what's the point of thinking deeply when the world only rewards shallow noise? People don't want truth. They just want entertainment." The professor smiled gently and replied, "Arman, remember this. When everyone thinks alike, no one is truly thinking." That sentence hit him like thunder. When everyone thinks alike, no one is truly thinking. He went home, wrote it on a paper, and pinned it to his wall. Something inside him stirred. For the first time, he realized critical thinking is not about being liked. It's about being alive. Arman began a new chapter. Every night he wrote his raw, unfiltered thoughts. Not what others believed, but what he believed. Instead of blindly agreeing, he asked, why? When someone said success means money, he asked, then why are rich people depressed? When someone said majority is always right, he whispered, then why did the world once believe the earth was flat? At first, people mocked him. "You think too much," they laughed. But Arman smiled because he knew thinking was his superpower. He started reading about leaders, scientists, and thinkers who challenged the crowd. People like Socrates, Martin Luther King Jr., and Steve Jobs. He realized that every great change in history began with someone who dared to think differently. Months later, another debate competition was announced. Same stage, same audience. This time the topic was, is following the crowd dangerous? Armand's heart raced. He remembered his failure, but this time he was ready. When his turn came, he stood tall and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, do you know what happens when everyone blindly follows the crowd? We get wars that should never have happened. We get lies dressed as truths. We get silence when voices should rise. Critical thinking isn't a luxury, it's survival. Because if you let the world think for you, the world will destroy you." The hall went silent. Then, slowly, applause grew. Not everyone agreed, but this time it didn't matter. Armand had found his voice. That day, he didn't just win the debate. He won himself back. Years later, Armand became a teacher, guiding students who felt lost in the noise of collective stupidity. He told them, "Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to stand alone. Remember, truth has never been found in the crowd. It has always been discovered by the brave few who dared to think differently." And so the boy who once feared thinking too much became the man who taught others to think for themselves. His story is a reminder to all of us. The world doesn't need more followers. It needs thinkers. So ask yourself today, are you just echoing the crowd, or are you brave enough to hear your own voice? Because in a time where critical thinking is disappearing, choosing to think for yourself may be the most powerful rebellion of all. Music swells and fades out.